In my adult years, high-intensity interval training and Yoga Sculpt really brought me back to working out. Growing up, I was all about soccer, which, when you think about it, is high-intensity interval training. You know, you're walking, then you're sprinting, then you're walking, then you're sprinting. It's all intervals, and it's super high intensity, super high impact. So back in 2015, when I had the rebirth of health and wellness in my life, it was because I took my first Yoga Sculpt workout. And then, pretty soon after, I took my first HIIT workout, or high intensity interval training. Well, today I'm going to talk about Yoga Sculpt versus high intensity interval training, how they've helped me with my asthma, my experience. Well, guess what? I have a free gift for you. It is my Healthy Living Guide. It talks about the 3 pillars of healthy living that helped me lose 30 pounds in 90 days. Back in December 2022, I thought I was in good shape. I had just ran the Honolulu Marathon, but when I weighed myself after I had 2 massive quarter pounders and 2 large fries from McDonald's, I weighed 190 plus pounds. I was like, okay, if I really want to take being a professional athlete seriously, I need to lose some weight. And I need to lose it in a way that I can keep it off as well and just overall live a healthier life. So that's what I did. I integrated these 3 pillars, and just by following these 3 pillars of healthy living, I've been able to keep the weight off as well. I'm sharing that with you with my guide link right below this video. So HIIT, H-I-I-T, high intensity interval training. What is HIIT? Well, the concept of HIIT is you do some sort of workout. So we can use bicep curls as an example, okay? So bicep curls. I could do like 10 or 20 of these, right? Then I can mix this with 15 to 30 seconds of rest and then go into a cardio exercise. And then I go back into a lifting exercise. Maybe we want to do Arnold press next, right? And when we're doing HIIT, we're talking about using lower weights. We're not trying to max out. We're trying to use weights that we can do a lot of reps of. High intensity interval training. Now, you can do high intensity interval training not just with weights, you can do it with running. I actually do this in something called a tempo run. I talk about this further on my channel with different videos about running, but a tempo run would be running different paces throughout a 4 to 5 mile run. You can do it in a 2 mile run if you want, but I like to do it in a 4 to 5 mile run. I'll be doing my run, maybe for 3 minutes. I'm gonna run at a very high pace, something called tempo. Tempo is a pace that is above your threshold level, which is, threshold is the amount of exertion that you can physically give for 1 full hour. So I run above that level to increase the efficiency of my body, removing lactic acid from my muscles as I'm working out. Okay? So it's a really fast pace. For me, it's something 7 minutes or faster per mile. Okay? That would be high intensity interval training too. You run that really fast for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then you take a slower pace. It's just all about intervals. You have high intensity interval followed by something that is a little less intensive, or a rest, okay? So you could do something like hammer curls, right, into a shoulder press. And you could even go all the way into a hero press, where we're basically making this a burpee. And you're gonna wanna use weights that are gonna make it high intensive enough for you without preventing you from doing a lot of reps. So that's high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training is really good for me and my asthma. Now remember, I'm not a healthcare professional, and you need to talk to your doctor before doing any of these things to make sure that it is okay for you and your asthma. I'm just talking from my own experience. High intensity interval training has really helped me and my asthma get better. Okay, it's really strengthened my lungs. My lungs really like to be pushed and then to back off. To be pushed and then to back off. That's why high intensity interval training is so good. Now I talk about high intensity interval training first because I believe that to an extent, Yoga Sculpt is a subsector of high intensity interval training. Just like an AMRAP or an EMOM is a subtype of high intensity interval training. But it's not fully true when you really break it down. okay? Yoga Sculpt has high intensity interval training integrated, but it also has yoga, specifically vinyasa yoga, which is flow yoga, as you can see here. It's where we mix the postures, our Sun A, our Sun B, with weights and with the concept of high intensity interval training. Now, it's really yoga plus weights plus cardio is what Yoga Sculpt is. Now, you can approach Yoga Sculpt in different ways. You can approach it with super light weights. You can use like the 3s, or you can approach it with some heavier weights, which means you're probably not using anything less than 8s. For me, I've worked it up so that I actually can use 25-pound weights for some exercises, like specifically a narrow row. Now, chest press, I could probably do a lot more than 25-pound weights, but we really don't use anything higher than 25-pound weights in the yoga studio, and that's just for safety purposes, okay? So Yoga Sculpt is my favorite type of workout of all time. Started doing it in 2015. I discovered it at Core Power Yoga. I had been doing just regular vinyasa flows for a couple of years at that point. I really got into yoga in 2011. I was going to just the basic vinyasa flows, not heated, at Core Power Yoga. Then in 2015, I was like, what is Yoga Sculpt? I want to try this. It's also heated, by the way. It's heated classroom. Vinyasa yoga has HIIT integrated into it. Weights, cardio, it's amazing, okay? Now, between the two of HIIT versus strictly Yoga Sculpt, I prefer Yoga Sculpt. But I do both. And I do both because the HIIT training that I do something very specific called an AMRAP. I have a whole video all about AMRAPs versus heavy lifting. Me and my mentor Robbie also talk about it even further on the channel. But basically, I like to do both of these types of workouts because they have different benefits, okay? For me, HIIT, I use to increase my overall strength. So when I'm doing strictly a HIIT workout, I try and use heavier weights. Now, not using the heavy weights, because I'm not trying to PR on how much I can lift, but I am using much heavier weights than I am when I'm doing Yoga Sculpt. When I'm doing Yoga Sculpt, I don't use 8s anymore. I used to use 8s all the time. I use 10s and 15s as my light weights, and then 20s and 25s as my heavy weights. When I'm doing HIIT, I'm using 30s, 35s. Depending on what we're doing, I may be bench pressing 70, 80, 100 pounds. So I can max out around 200 pounds for bench, but I'm pushing myself. When I'm doing any sort of chest workout in Yoga Sculpt, it's usually either strictly body weight or I'm using 25-pound dumbbells versus 50s for a HIIT workout. Okay, so I use it to increase my strength and to increase my endurance doing these high intensity workouts. I actually have found that by doing my HIIT workouts like this, I'm increasing what I can do in Yoga Sculpt. I can actually use heavier weights more frequently without having to take breaks. I'm actually able to do longer sets, all these different things. With Yoga Sculpt, I'm able to not only increase my endurance, increase my lung capacity, I'm also able to increase my flexibility because you're doing these things in different poses. For example, we like to do something called tricep extensions. Now, if we're doing tricep extensions without yoga, you're probably looking at something like elbows in, and just straight up and down, okay? Or if I'm facing you, elbows in, hugging our head or our ears, and we're going straight up and down. In Yoga Sculpt, we're in something called a chair pose, okay? So knees bent, and chair pose, back flat, and then we're doing our tricep extensions. So that's the cool thing about Yoga Sculpt is we're really integrating weights with yoga. So overall for asthma, HIIT and Yoga Sculpt has done a lot for me. I actually have become certified with both. I'm a certified Yoga Sculpt teacher through Core Power, and I'm a certified HIIT instructor through Endorphin. I love these types of workouts. They are my favorite training types of workouts. And guess what? You can use these workouts to train for other things. They're not just great for cross training. What I have found specifically for running is I can run certain distances by Yoga Sculpt and HIIT training mixed with long runs. Now, if you're gonna do 50 milers or even 50 Ks and 100 Ks like I do, you're gonna have to run more than a long run every week and integrate these exercises. But I have found if you have the goal of running like a half marathon, or even you might be able to pull it off at the full marathon, I have pulled it off at a full marathon, is you can use these workouts instead of runs to train. Okay. Now, when I say that, I'm saying like you probably need to do Yoga Sculpt 3 to 4 to 5 times a week and throw in a long run. But if you get bored running every day and you're like, oh God, I don't want to have to get all these miles in, you can use it as a supplement. Okay. Now you're probably not going to be able to do much more than a half marathon or a marathon supplementing with these workouts because you really got to get those miles in. But it is something that has really helped me in my life, especially when I used to not like running. Now I love running. But when I didn't like running and I had the goal of like, I want to run a half marathon or I want to run a full marathon, it was a lot easier way for me to look at it. I'm like, okay, I don't have to run every day. I can just do Yoga Sculpt, which I love. Remember, I have that gift for you. It's linked right below this video. It's my Healthy Living Guide, where I go through the 3 pillars of healthy living that help me lose 30 pounds in 90 days and keep the weight off. Thank you for the likes and subscribes.